and we have ourselves another controversy. Where former UFC lightweight champ Benson Henderson goes, those seem to follow. Here at the United Center in Chicago, at UFC on Fox 10 in the main event, Henderson squeaked out another narrow split decision victory, this time over former Strikeforce lightweight champ Josh Thompson. Now, Thompson injured his hand early in the bout, and that led to some game plan changes for him later on, but many still thought he did enough to win the decision. However, 2 of the 3 judges disagreed, gave it to Henderson. Not a popular decision with many fans, however, Benson Henderson just has a knack for eking out these wins. The question is, where does that put him in the lightweight title picture? We'll have to wait to find out, because he recently lost to champion Anthony Pettis, and this was not exactly the statement win he was looking for. As for Thompson, he made overtures that this could be his last fight. He's not quite sure if he wants to continue, so we'll have to wait and see on that. In the co-main event, the heavyweights went at it, and though Gabriel Gonzaga started off strong, he faded fast in the second and third rounds to the point where he seemed almost too exhausted to continue by the end. Stipe Miocic took great advantage of that, turned on the heat and up the pressure down the stretch, winning the unanimous decision victory. That's 2 in a row for Stipe. My biggest impact fighter of the night is Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who knocked out Adriano Martins with a brutal first-round head kick. Now, on paper, it wasn't necessarily the toughest matchup for Cerrone, but it was one he had to win. He'd been very open before this fight about his struggles with motivation and with his personal finances, and said that, going broke actually helped him rediscover his fire and passion for the sport. That proved to be very bad news for Martins, who took the kick right alongside the neck and chin area and went down in a heap. It's a big win for Cerrone, one he definitely needed. However, even after picking up the $50,000 knockout of the night bonus, he told reporters gathered at the post-fight press conference that that's likely going to get spent too. So look out, whoever Donald Cerrone's next opponent is. My biggest disappointment of the night has to be Gabriel Gonzaga. It's one thing to go into a fight and lose. That happens. It happens to everybody in MMA. However, you want to lose because you ran up against a better fighter, not because you just didn't have the conditioning, which seemed to be what happened to Gonzaga here. He was off to a great start in the first round, but then in the second and the third just couldn't keep it up, to the point where it seemed like he might tap out due to pure exhaustion by the final round. Not only is that a bad move for Gonzaga, it also kind of took some of the energy out of this card. As we've seen with heavyweight fights in the past, when they're brutal, furious, one-round affairs, they can be really, really exciting. But when they're plodding 3-round affairs, not so much. That seemed to be the case here, and it did seem to suck a lot of air out of the arena. My diamond in the rough tonight has to be Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy himself, who pulled out a submission win over the highly touted Sergio Pettis. It was a back-and-forth fight the first 2 rounds. Caceres took some head kicks that would knock out most fighters in the UFC, but in the third, he seized the opportunity, locked in a rear naked choke, forced the submission, and kept the judges out of this one entirely. Good win for Caceres, who's riding a 2-fight win streak, more if you don't count the decision win he had overturned for a positive test for marijuana. Here's a guy who seems to be surging, who seems to have found his home now, and seems really comfortable in the octagon after initially looking like he might turn out to be just a flash in the pan. Now, Caceres seems like he's somebody you really need to pay attention to. Now, when it comes to rating this event, you can't exactly call it the most exciting card that the UFC has put on Fox, but the prelims were peppered with some pretty good action. You also saw some breakout performances, such as Eddie Wineland, who comes out with a TKO win in his first fight since losing his title shot to Renan Barão. Then, of course, there's fighters like Donald Cerrone and Alex Caceres really establishing themselves. And overall, we seem to be seeing a pattern here where the UFC on Fox cards that don't feature a title fight do seek to establish top contenders in the division. That one seemed no different here. In the main event, while it might not be the kind of slugfest that pleases a lot of casual fans, it was a really intense and impressive grappling display between 2 savvy technicians and a gutsy performance by Thompson, who injured himself early on and then threw the game plan out the window and came up with something else down the stretch. Many people thought he deserved the win for that effort. In the heavyweight division, you had Miocic keeping his name in the mix, but if it's real action you wanted, you might have been better off tuning into the prelims on Fox Sports 1. That's where we saw some of the smaller fighters, 4 bantamweight fights in all, and a lot of action, as we've come to expect from the lighter weight classes. They might not have been in the spotlight on network TV, but these are the guys who are clearly very hungry, and you're going to have to pay attention to them going forward. They won't be ignored for long.